Greetings to all C3RF members and friends across the nation and indeed around the world, and a special welcome to the folks at Veterans for Freedom who are watching this edition of In Hot on their dedicated streaming channels. Today's In Hot rolls in on the threat to Canada's representative democracy at its most critical juncture, that being between the constituent and their political leadership at the local level. It is this level that we see international institutions and agencies displacing this most fundamental expression of we the people. We are very fortunate to have with us today Maggie Hope Braun as a wingman today to discuss the usurpation of power, as she has been front and center in helping communities across the country push back against the loss of an ability to chart their own futures. Recently, Maggie was an instrumental player in helping the community of Thorold say no to international efforts aimed at making municipal operations yield to the needs of the climate change narrative. By way of introduction, Maggie Hope Braun was born in 1985 in Muskoka. I hope that we gave away your age there. I hope that's okay, Maggie. She spent her early life in Papua New Guinea. She pursued her studies in ecosystem management and later became a political activist by running for the Canadian Action Party in 2011. Maggie spent the next 12 years as a homeschooling parent, community volunteer, and board member of the Canadian Action Party and Terrace Green Thumb Society. During the COVID pandemic, she attended the Freedom Convoy of Hope demonstrations and was arrested for her peaceful protest. Later, Maggie testified at the Public Order Emergency Commission, believing that Canada's democratic systems were not functioning properly. While speaking in communities across Canada, Maggie realized the need for a citizen-led organization to bring about systematic change through civic engagement. Gather 2030 was born and now leads the Kiklia initiative, a project designed to help Canadians engage their municipalities, protect their community, and strengthen citizen-led democracy. Welcome to In Hot, Maggie. It's a real pleasure to have you on board and talk about your activities, which are of great interest to anybody who lives in a municipality in Canada, I'll tell you that. And I just thought I'd start by, I noticed that you are very, very active in Thorold in getting them to turn the partners for climate protection away from their town. But you're from Peterborough, and you have a Peterborough delegation. Could you flesh out that delegation? What is that all about in Peterborough?
So Peterborough is where I'm from, and after the last couple of years, of course, there's many citizen-led groups and people active in their communities and all across Canada, and Peterborough was no different. So we have lots of different events here and activists and groups that are doing different things, and I'm all about networking, so I think it's really important to get together and support each other's initiatives and bring this big network that we already have together and just connect it. So I was doing that work here in Peterborough and found a few people who were attending the town councils, and one gentleman in particular was very interested in addressing the declaration of climate emergency that Peterborough enacted a few years ago. Mm-hmm. And of course, that with my environmental background, I was very interested in helping him with that, knowing that the science behind climate change was more nuanced than the media and certain organizations will have us believe. So we decided that instead of just rallying the troops on a Saturday outside City Hall when nobody was in the building, that we would start going to our council meetings and speaking as delegates. And the time came when we could speak to the environmental committee reports, and that was really the first big delegation that spread throughout the network or across the country, and really identified the fact that, Agenda 21 was signed in 1992. And it appears that ever since that time, our country is being governed by the direction of a lot of different international organizations. And one of those organizations we don't hear a lot about, and it's called ICLEI, the International Council on Local Environmental Initiatives. And we went in and we shared our concerns about their environmental report, which talked about how during the COVID lockdowns, our travel patterns had been modified and that they were looking to continue to target our mobility as a means of reducing greenhouse gas emissions.
Wow.
And at the end of my delegation, we just reminded them that, this sounds like a violation of our mobility rights, and they should look into that. And also, that no matter what Canada has agreed to at the national level, no level of government has the authority to implement foreign agendas in our country that go against our Canadian Constitution and so on. So, and our charter rights.
Of
So,
course.
so it was a great 5-minute delegation. It went viral. Everyone started realizing that we can go to our town halls and start voicing our concerns about the action items that are related to Agenda 21. So that began a lot of research and brought together a lot of people that were interested in researching this, and connected me with Elizabeth Marshall and many others. And just, a couple weeks after that first delegation, we went to a small town in rural Peterborough County, Duro-Dummer, and they were about to pass the official plan for 2050 for the entire county. It's a UN-driven plan.
Yeah.
And we went in and did one delegation. We filled the room with 65 people. We voiced our concerns respectfully and empowered that council to delay the official plan. And the next day, their little rural council went to the bigger meeting for the county, voiced the same concerns, and
Good.
almost all the mayors and councillors agreed with it, and they all delayed the official plan. So it shows that civic engagement can work.
Wow, that is just absolutely fantastic. And, I really like the idea of going from the local up because it sure seems like going top down to try to fix things is just not working. And I would use your experience with the Freedom Convoy 2022, getting arrested for peacefully demonstrating as proof of the fact that top down is a really problematic way to go in today's Canada. What I'd like to do is I'd like to cut away to a newspaper article that talks about Thorold, because you took your approach to Thorold and to their town council, and here we have a share of an article from the Thorold today, and they talk about partnership dissolved. Thorold pulls out of climate program. And this was basically you and your organization. I just want to roll down here to this highlighted portion that says the Partners for Climate Protection Program, that's PCP, is administered, this is what was turned down, is administered by the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and ICLEI, that International Council of Local Environmental Initiatives that you mentioned, otherwise known as Local Governments for Sustainability Canada, and received funding from the federal government. So I wanted to throw this up here because there's a lot involved here. These organizations that are coming to these small towns, communities, and cities, larger cities, are not, one-ofs. They're not just of themselves. They're really hooked in together with a whole lot of other organizations and have access to federal funding. As a matter of fact, more than 500 municipalities have signed on to this free program, which provides members with tools, technical support to help them meet the program's 5 milestones: creating an inventory of greenhouse gas emitters, setting a target level for reduction, developing a plan, implementing a plan, monitoring the impact. Now, it says the program is free, so councils can jump in and get access to this stuff for free. I'll just stop sharing there. But how free is it to the communities? Once you have these organizations, international organizations, directing your municipal operations, is it free to the community, to the taxpayer? How much is it going to cost them to go down this road? Do you have any idea?
They say that it's free, but it's essentially a massive data harvesting program. And they say that they're just looking at greenhouse gas emitters, but they're actually collecting data on all of our energy and waste, all of our energy consumption and waste. And when we look at that, a lot of the energy that we consume, isn't from waste emitting or greenhouse gas emitting sources like nuclear and hydro and a lot of these other sources of energy. But they're looking at all of it and aiming for net zero. So when it comes to the cost of the program, there are many, right? So they're bringing in their climate action plans that they get the cities to adopt. They have, along with it, the purchase of a new municipal fleet updated to EV electronic vehicles. They
Yeah.
bring in new green building standards that aren't legislated by the government, but create a whole bunch of red tape and make the whole construction industry, it's just getting it all stuck up in these unnecessary policies and
Well,
mandates there.
those
The
are huge, huge costs. And, I've always wondered, really from a common sense perspective. I mean,
Yeah,
Canada, it's a known fact that Canada contributes about 1.5, 1.6% of the world's greenhouse gases. Okay, very, 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 very small amount. And now, if you look at a community like Thorold or Peterborough, well, I mean, that portion of 1.5% is minuscule. It's negligible. It's nothing.
yeah,
So to think that you're going to change, save the world by doing this stuff at your level and incur all these extra costs while you're doing it, it sounds like it's just money being flushed down a black hole because you're not going to achieve anything worldwide. I mean, especially when China is still building coal-powered energy plants on a weekly basis.
yeah.
And Vancouver is shipping coal to China like crazy, from Canada to China. I mean, all these things are happening, and these poor communities, these small municipalities, are being asked to share the burden of the world and save the world. And man, it doesn't make sense to me. But when we talk about ICLEI, how big is this organization? Do you have something you could show us that shows just how extensive this is across the nation?
Absolutely. And I'll just add to that, Canada is a huge country. We're very vast. We have family that lives in other provinces. We need to travel. And Canadians are using fuel for heating their homes, cooling their homes, driving to work, traveling to see family, getting away on a trip, all and cooking our food, all essential for life in
Yeah.
Canada, right? So this is what they're trying to um, guilt us into changing our entire lifestyle for. So how big is the organization? And continuing on with that conversation of cost and this data harvesting. So ICLEI, so we harvest the data. So it says that the program's free, but then they get all of our municipal staff on board with harvesting all of this data, and it takes hundreds of hours to do it. So there is a cost to that.
Yeah.
And then they give it over for free to ICLEI, an international third party. And when we look at what is ICLEI, nobody knows. Was so much fun the last year just digging into it and going into this discussion. Who is ICLEI? Nobody knows who ICLEI is. And it turns out ICLEI is funded by Google, which is funded by BlackRock, which is funded by Vanguard and Fidelity and all these massive players in
Oh,
the land acquisition world that we live
oh,
in. And
oh,
so if we think that by handing over our data to ICLEI to let them suggest policies to our local governments through the staff is a good idea and isn't going to end up with us slowly being moved off of the land and into cities, high density housing and have all of our Canadian land being bought up by foreign investors. And now we're all renting in the cities owned by foreign investors.
wow.
This
You're
started in
talking about, it sounds like you're talking about 15-minute cities. Is ICLEI involved with this 15-minute city initiative?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's really the
Okay.
root source of all of it.
Okay.
Um, sustainable development, when we look at documents like
I'll
this
I'll just
municipal,
say to the I'll just say to our audience, Maggie, that you're throwing up, you're sharing your screen there, and you're showing us. I guess that those was a map of Canada and all the ICLEI outfits. Was that the first one?
yeah, I'm just going to move it over here so I can get it. Membership page, there it is.
Okay.
So I'll just, how big is it? I'll give a little bit of a history on ICLEI first. So ICLEI was founded by the United Nations in 1990. And before that, the United Nations held the Brundtland Commission in Vancouver. And they termed the coin sustainable development. And in that paper, it talked about property rights. And it said that land should not be considered an ordinary asset owned by individuals, but
No.
that public control of land use was indispensable for their development schemes. And then they founded ICLEI in 1990. And then immediately after, they came over to Vancouver, British Columbia, and they sat down with an organization called the Federation of Canadian Municipalities.
Yep.
And they drafted, it says in their founding documents, in this document here, I hope it came up, this is called the Municipal Primer. It was put out by the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. And this is the document that they put out in 1994, showing how Agenda 21 would then be implemented through Canadian municipalities. And the same year that they put out this document, they came up with this program called the Partners for Climate Protection Program.
Okay.
And ever since that time, membership in this program has been growing. And this is the data harvesting program for ICLEI. This is the program that's getting our municipalities to set reduction targets and developing climate action plans that involve a lot of future expenditures and policy changes and land use changes. Basically, making our properties making it so that we can't use and enjoy our properties the way we should be able to here in Canada, and affecting our housing market, I would say, as well.
Doesn't this sound? Sorry, Maggie. Doesn't this sound a little bit Stalinistic? I mean, isn't this what Stalin did in the 20s with farms and farmers, and by initiating 5-year plans and taking the land away from private ownership?
Yep. And this is an ancient battle. This is an ancient battle for the land, right? It's all about the land. You think of Canada, we're 80 to 89% uninhabited. We have 0.5% of the world's total population. We don't have a land problem. We should each have easily 100 acres just given to us at the onset of our birth here in Canada. And and yet you look at Winnipeg, they're coming out with their new official plan, and I think they want, about, don't quote me on it, but they want like 400 people or something like that on 1 acre. That's their, or maybe I got that wrong. Hold on.
Okay. Well, you're thinking
not.
Yeah, that sounds like putting everybody in the same acreage. Sounds like a great way to go, doesn't it?
Yeah, but that municipal primer, it talks about driving future population growth to settlement areas. So really, they want us off the land and they want us in urban areas. So that's what we pointed out with the official plan in Peterborough County, is that they were limiting the future population growth in the rural townships and driving it all to the urban areas. And that if the councillors just passed this without any resistance, that they would be the ones to sign the death sentence for their municipalities. And so they decided not to pass it, which was fantastic.
Now, it seems like this is the kind of information that people at the municipal level, the actual constituents, the voters, need to have in their hands, which I can tell you, quite frankly, is not in their hands right now. And it's so great to see you out there making this information available. I want to take your presentation of where ICLEI is across the country and how they're hooked in with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and the Partners for Climate Protection with those organizations. I'm going to share screen again because there's some interesting work here done by Elizabeth Marshall. You mentioned her name. She did a paper, and this paper went to the Senate of Canada, I believe, in one form or another. And it talks about China's growing global control of the United Nations. You mentioned BlackRock, Vanguard. I'm going to scoot down here to a highlighted section that says, Elizabeth Marshall says there should also be a withdrawal of funding from various affiliates and partners involved with United Nations Sustainability and Development Goals. This statement is supported by the words of the Secretary General of the UN when he made his statement at the Belt and Road Initiative Forum in 2017. The aforementioned is also supported with the knowledge that since 2007, this was what got me, the Undersecretary General for Development, Economic and Social Affairs advises the Secretary General of the United Nations on all development-related issues, including climate change, internet governance, financing for development, and has been a member of the People's Republic of China and is a Communist Party member. So that's since 2007, we've had this critical role advising the Director General of the United Nations, being a Communist Party of China member since that time. And that position is vital in hooking up the Belt and Road Initiative from China with the United Nations Development Goals. And just to make that point and hammer it home, we have United Nations. These are remarks from the opening of the Belt and Road Forum. There you see Guterres, the Director General of the United Nations, and he says, while the Belt and Road Initiative and the 2030 Agenda are different in their nature and scope, both have sustainable development as the overreaching objective. Both strive to create opportunities, global public goods, and win-win cooperation, and both aim to deepen connectivity across countries and regions, connectivity in infrastructure, trade, finance policies, and perhaps most important of all, peoples. In order for the participating countries along the Belt and Road to fully benefit from the potential of enhanced connectivity, it is crucial to strengthen the links between the initiative and the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. These 17 goals can guide the policies and actions under the Belt and Road towards the true sustainable development. So I'm going to stop share. And this is scary because what we're saying is that the ICLEI that you put up on your map is hooked into this whole climate change Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, and that's all coming out of the United Nations with 17 Sustainability Development Goals, and that's all hooked in with the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, which is controlled since 2007 by Chinese Communist Party members. This is what we're getting ourselves into, and I don't think Canadians realize just what is happening as they are being, as you say, aptly guilted into saving the world.
Yeah, and I love to just take a minute, and when we read that, it can be overwhelming for the majority of people. So I think what I've been doing is giving people some hope, and I just want to give an example of that. All across this country, we have NGOs posing as local NGOs for sustainability. And a lot of our municipalities have been influenced by these NGOs. Here in Peterborough, the Sustainable Peterborough, their founding documents state that about 30 years ago, a group of residents got together for brunch once a month and discussed how they would influence the local council to adopt these sustainable development programs. And then they formed Sustainable Peterborough, and they are the ones administrating the Partners for Climate Protection program here in our city. Yeah. So we started doing delegations. We started pointing this out. We started putting it up on the screen for the counselors to see. Hey, did you know you're giving a lot of money to this NGO? And it says in their strategic plan that their job and their mandate is to monitor and track our progress towards the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals.
Yeah.
And maybe you should consider defunding them and giving that money to the counselors, because at this point they were looking at sending a counselor to run for the board of the FCM, and we brought up our concerns with them and how they were basically only putting forward programs to push forward the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And like, we're just trying to remind them. And at the end of the day, the city of Peterborough, whether it was because of this or not, they're no longer funding that NGO anymore. They've pulled the funding as of next year from that organization. So sometimes it's just a matter of turning the lights on and somebody just going in there and saying something about it, right? Because what we're finding in the councils is there's a couple counselors that can really hear this information and realize that we are right. And then there's a bunch of them in the middle that just want to do what's popular, and they don't want to. So when we bring this forward, they realize, this is a pretty unpopular decision to continue down that road. And then there's one or two counselors that are kind of bullying and pushing the program. And that becomes really obvious when you're in a room with them, right?
Yeah.
So, and when you start doing press releases about your delegations and all these great civic engagement strategies that we can utilize. And at the end of the day, I feel like we're going into the councils, we're turning the light on, and all the staff and counselors that push the program, they basically quit and run. So that's what happened in Thorold. And it's like two staff and one chair quit because of this work. And I think it's
noticed
fantastic.
that the vote at Thorold to dump the PCP program was I think 7-1, and the one who voted against it was the best he could offer was, well, we're going to be left behind. I mean, like, that's a reason to spend all this money and time and effort and give up all these freedoms because you might be left behind. If that's the best you can do, then I'm sorry, but people are going to vote no.
Yeah. So when we talk about ICLEI and our democracy too, their guidebooks that the staff receive in order to implement these programs are going around the Municipal Act, and there's certain duties of the council and duties of the staff. And ICLEI in its guidebooks is recommending that the staff are the ones to make recommendations and to draft these different policies and plans, and that's not their job. So
that's what extremely worrisome, Maggie, because what you're describing there is a situation where the staff, in consultation with an international organization, begin to take over the democratic process. So you, as a constituent, you elect a counselor, you elect someone to city council, but it doesn't make a matter one way or another, because the town is being run by the staff who's being run by an international organization. It's a representative democracy is being flushed down the toilet.
And another aspect for your viewers of interest is here in Canada, the municipalities are under the jurisdiction of the provinces. According to the Constitution, they're under the exclusive jurisdiction of the provinces. And now what we have is an organization, the FCM, working with ICLEI, an international organization, offering free programs to our municipalities and essentially bypassing the provinces and bringing in all of these programs, right? So, and affecting massive change at the local level in that way. So,
and then on top
constitutionally, there's an issue.
So we've got our democracy is being end run at the local level because the staff has taken over the operations, and at the provincial level because they are not being informed of what is happening when in their jurisdiction. And I would also just suggest it's happening at the federal level, where money is being made available for all these usurpations of power, political power, to happen. So we've got a 1, 2, 3 combination punch going on here.
We do. And when we look at the Partners for Climate Protection program, for instance, it's being funded by the federal government, administrated by the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. But at the end of the day, they have waived all liability for the adoption and implementation of this program. And they don't tell our councillors that. In the joining resolution, when that 3-page joining resolution comes in front of them for a vote on a Tuesday evening over the last 30 years, there's no mention of the fact that the funders and administrators of the program have waived all liability for them to adopt it and implement it. So this is how they're getting them to do it, right? They say it's free, it's voluntary, you can leave at any time, we're going to help you save the world. And they just, they're in a meeting with 600 pages of planning documents in front of them, and they just are like, okay, first, second passed, great. And they don't realize that 3-page resolution is going to bring ICLEI, international organizations, into direct communication with their staff over these planning documents. And it's going to take their staff to networking venues and events where they can learn how to implement the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals at the local level, and how to twist the policies and the bylaws and everything to bring us into conformity with the global agenda, right?
Agenda 2030. Isn't this kind of diabolical? I mean, this is kind of they got us on all sides. They got us hemmed in here, and I guess all we can do is disagree and volunteer to stay out of these programs, because, as you say, it's voluntary, so we can say no. And Thorold said no, and Peterborough said no. I know in my home county of Lanark, they're just beginning the process of talking to the PCP folks, and they're selling this as we're going to save the world type thing, and we're just in the early stages of talking about it. And I went to my town councillors. I said, well, we should have a public debate on this. And no, the response was, well, thank you very much for your opinion. We really appreciate it. See you later. Sayonara. So
interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. And it appears that it's maybe time to flash up your strategies and tactics and get involved respectfully.
Yep. So I've just, after so many people have reached out, this is the problem all across the country. We saw the map. They've taken over 500 municipalities. That's impacting 98% of the population already. We want this to stop. We don't want them to get adopted in any more municipalities. So what I've done is a full report on the program, laying out what the program is, what all of our key concerns are with it. And from that report, we're sending that to all the councillors all across this country. And so that is a report that we can work with a small group in Lanark County to send this to the councillors there. And I honestly think this report, a couple delegations, a couple follow-up emails, and a couple press releases is really all it's going to take for them to back off, because we have very legitimate concerns, and we're voicing them in a respectful, diplomatic way. And we're giving the councillors an opportunity to bow out of these programs and preserve their dignity, and just really paving the way for them. And at the end of the day, in Thorold, we saw, they started off by calling us conspiracy theorists when we went in there and dared to mention a few basic facts about CO2. And then by the end of it, they were writing a respectful article on it, right?
Yeah, so that's very true. What a great energized conversation we're having, Maggie, because not only are we're providing the folks a little bit of education, but looks like we're also initiating a little bit of action here in Lanark County anyway. So that's fantastic. Now, before we wrap up, is there anything our C3RF members, Veterans for Freedom members can do to help out?
Absolutely. So Kickley is obviously the name of the initiative that is kicking the International Council out of local environmental initiatives. We have kickley.substack.com. That is a newsletter that goes out, not just, at this point, we have about 5,000 people signed up of concerned citizens from across the country. By the end of this week, we're going to have another 5,000 signed up. And that is all of the elected representatives at the municipal level across the country will be receiving that email. So that is going to be a resource that when I put out an email, we're essentially sharing information with the counselors so that they can make better decisions. And we're also re-educating the communities and the counselors. And so I'm recommending that people follow up with their counselors when, subscribe to that newsletter and then copy and paste that into an email and follow up with your counselors and invite them to coffee. A lot of this happens behind the scenes. How do we influence people, right? How do we win? Yeah. I want to win. I don't care if they back out quietly, right? I just want them to back out. And so this is a great book. This was written by Mary Baker in the States. It's called Citizen Ninja by Mary Baker. Stand Up to Power. It's all about helping ordinary people stand up to power and make a difference in their community. Some really great, psychological tips. Oh, you can't really see it, but there's pictures in here. It's designed to be about a 2-hour read, and it'll make you 100 times more effective in your communications with your community and your councils. So I don't know about you. I just want us to win. So at the end of the day, a 2-hour read and subscribing to a newsletter that's going to give me the right words to communicate these concerns to our counselors is a great place to start. And we also have the website kickley.ca, so people can check that out, and they can join Kickley Canada on Facebook. In a couple of short weeks, we're at 3,000 members and growing across the country. So the ground.
Okay. How do you spell Kickley? Kickley.ca. Yeah. How do you spell Kickley?
Yeah. Kickley is KICLEI. So we put a K in front of Ickley, and we even made our website look like Ickley's website. So we're having fun with this.
I love your enthusiasm and your energy, Maggie. It's fantastic. I think when we close down this in hot, I think I'm going to run right down to my town council, my city hall, and start talking to people. Okay.
Well, I'll make sure you have my draft report, and you can just go from there.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for this, Maggie. It's been really educational, and I know folks will be very, very pleased to hear the information that you have brought forward for them. I'd like to thank you on behalf of C3RF and wish you all the best in your future endeavors here as you go across the country and expand. Great.
Thank you very much. Honored to be here.
Okay. Thanks again, Maggie.